Howdy. Welcome to this.
Ned's Moody Creek Ranch?
Welcome to Ned's Moody Creek Ranch.
Or not.
Yeah, welcome to Ned's Moody Creek Ranch. Welcome to this.
So this is kind of a little bit of our background and how we ended up in a lifestyle that was in the city completely different from what we're living now, and kind of what led to a breakdown in our family and our marriage. And you can learn more about the breakdown in our next video, which is part 2, the breakdown.
Yeah.
So we'd invite you to watch that and join in on more of the story. But this is kind of part 1.
So we're trying to tell this story of what happened to our lives. We live in the middle of nowhere with our 5, soon to be 6 kids. And the direction of our life has taken some real crazy wiggles. And so we're trying to put this into context for ourselves, and then maybe hopefully into context for an audience that might find some value in the story.
Yeah, and that's why we're sharing the story in hopes that, we've learned some really valuable lessons that have really strengthened ourselves as individuals, our marriage and our family, and we hope that, we can provide something that can help and inspire other people who may be experiencing some of the same things that we were. We're going to begin with kind of talking about how our lives were insulated and what led us into a lifestyle that led us into a kind of like a dream life in the city.
Yeah, what caused us to want to chase after like the typical life that everybody says. Because to take things way back, and we were talking about this earlier, every kid starts out just like a simple little being. And they have this budding, blossoming personality, and
so much creativity.
Just alive, really.
So much hope. Anything is possible, And
then little by little, things
chip away at that.
The world starts squashing those little things out. Don't cry. Be a man. Do this. Don't do that.
You can't do that. You're this. You're that.
And we take on these boxes, or these mindsets, or these frameworks. And when you start to become something, we start to become like our parents were.
Or something that those frameworks tell us we need to be.
Yeah, or the people
to be successful,
And a lot of our life has been kind of inserting into a certain framework and trying it and seeing how it worked for us, and then realizing that didn't work, and then exiting the framework. And so we're really popping in and out of all sorts of ideas throughout this whole journey and the story that we're going to tell you.
Yeah, so I think we can start with when we met each other.
Okay.
So when I met him, I was really inspired by he was just kind of larger than life with all of his ideas. And he was super creative.
For example, and someone will probably steal this if I put it out on the internet, but I have an idea to someday produce space fireworks.
Yeah, which I don't know how.
Ridiculous. Those are the kind of ideas she's talking about.
But those were the ideas, and it was just what is he talking about? But that's kind of cool, because he's not squashed by whatever squashes you to be able to talk about these wild ideas, and nobody told him, that all of those things were impossible. I guess
not appropriate.
Yeah, I guess he probably was told that, but he pushed through that. So it was really awesome. He was a songwriter, and I loved listening to the music that came that he produced and created. And it was just wow. I felt like when I met him, just the world had so many more possibilities. And that was really awesome.
Thank you. That's nice of you. I thought when I
you don't have to return.
Well, no, okay, maybe I'll talk about this later. But I thought that I couldn't believe that nobody had already found you yet. That's what I thought.
Well, I was pretty young.
You were.
I hadn't been around for that long after
we
high
created
school.
a relationship, and we dated for a couple years, and we fell in love, and decided to make a family.
Yeah. So.
And I told her, this was how I got her. I was like, I'm going to be a radiologist someday.
Yeah, he was going to go to medical
I'm
school.
going to go to medical school.
So it was like, oh yeah, life is taken care of.
So
I mean, I
creative,
grew
and
up.
he's going to give me a perfect
Yeah,
life.
and we kind of both grew up in lifestyles that our parents provided for us that were really like growing up in affluent neighborhoods and around doctors and dentists and lawyers, and so
Nice.
it was kind of like,
Nice lifestyle.
yeah, so my dad, telling him like, oh, I met this boy and he's gonna be a doctor was like, oh, great, had I come to him and been like, I'm gonna marry a musician and he wants to write music for a living,
To be an artist.
then, that presented some worries. So it was kind of like,
It fit.
it was kind of like he is a musician, but his plan is to go to medical school.
really sad,
and why do you
yeah.
think that was? Do you think you were actually interested
Well, the way
in
that
going to medical school, or
I grew up in a kind of a country club lifestyle, and I wanted to replicate that lifestyle at least.
so that was a
And
big
it was a way to make
influence.
make my parents proud, and be like, yeah, I'm gonna provide, and do it. And I really
because why wasn't music something that you could tell people like, I'm gonna follow my passion and I'm gonna be a musician?
Yeah, music was.
Because that was your passion.
I guess I didn't see music in the place that I grew up. I grew up in a little town in the Midwest, in Kansas, and there weren't a lot of musicians there who were actually making money. And there wasn't a lot of flourishing arts.
So it just didn't seem like
So
it was a
didn't seem
viable
like-
option.
Yeah, like I only saw like 3 professions that could make enough money to live,
Yeah.
that lifestyle. So, yeah, that's why I think we always just want to please people. I'm totally a people pleaser.
Totally.
For sure,
I am
so-
too. So I think we were like slowly, like we talked about as children, like, everything is possible. And then life kind of eats away at you. And so we meet and still everything kind of seems possible, but we start to realize like, we're going to have to start fitting into a framework if
you
we want to
see-
grow up
You
and
see the
be
way
serious.
people, like I knew I wanted to have a family. I thought I wanted to have a large family. And I
Yeah.
saw what it took to create that and provide it. And so you're like, well, that's one model that works. So I guess if I do that model, then I can have those things too.
Yeah.
So I think that we both came from large families, and that was also a desire. So
Totally.
that also worked out too.
And it was kind of like that was the only way we saw was possible. Like, if you have a family, then this is the route you have to take to take care of
to make
your
it
family.
work.
So music, performing, songwriting, it was just like, that's a hobby, but it's not really an option.
So we were married, and we went to school and studied, and I was a pre-med major for quite a few years until it came time to take the MCAT. And then I realized I have been sloughing a lot of school to do music at that time. I had been.
Well, and he was still studying music at the same time.
I was still in.
And we were
a
in
bunch of
choirs and
jazz piano quartets
Yeah.
and doing all sorts of music stuff that was pulling me away from the sciences. And so I think I realized at that point I was like, I have to commit to this. Like if I'm gonna go down the medical path, that's gonna be my life. Like this is getting really real now. And I think that kind of spooked me a little bit. So I pulled off of that and just decided to finish a degree in music.
And I think that I knew that, in the depths of my heart that was pretty much
And we
what
had
was
kind
going to
of-
happen
we had-
anyway.
At that point, we had lived together for a few years, and we kind of established our family. I think we had one child at the time.
We graduated right before we had our first child.
Okay, so right
From
around
college.
then, what I'm saying is we kind of began to develop our own personalities, and we were kind of our own unit. So how much influence our families had on us and our societal frameworks was getting less and less. And so I think we both realized,
But still had a good grasp on us, for sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
But we both realized like we should go after the dream again. Like let's just do the arts. Let's
Yeah.
see if we can make this work.
So we graduate and we're like, well, where do we perform? Where is songwriting happening, And we're like, Nashville is the place. And it seems like it's more of a family-friendly
It was like
place.
New York or LA, and then we were like, well, for families, maybe Nashville.
Yeah,
would
and
work.
we had our oldest at the time. We had just had our baby. So we move all of our stuff into a storage unit in Nashville, and
we
head
move
out
out
to, we
there.
move halfway. He went to the Midwest where his parents were, just prepping to make it out to Nashville. And
We get out there
happened.
we were out there for a couple weeks, and we essentially just run out of money. And
we weren't, I think it was probably like a lack of maturity to step up and say, hey, we're going to just make this work. I think there was a lot of fear. Like,
tons of fear. Yeah.
it was just moving way far away. We didn't have a job out there. And how are we going to do this? And then we find out that I'm pregnant with our second. So
It's
a whole new load
it's a
of,
totally different
of
world
stress.
when you add
comes.
a wife and a baby to the decision-making process. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I moved to LA after high school, and went out and played music and wrote songs and had a great time alone.
It's a lot easier.
But when it's just you and some friends,
Yeah.
it's like you can do whatever you want. But
how
I
do
think
you
that
go out
way-
somewhere without a job and you're like, hey, I'm just going to hit the cafes and try and play.
Yeah.
But then how do you provide? You have this wife and these, soon to be 2 kids.
So we essentially ran
So it
out
was like-
we ran out of money, and then we just didn't make take that leap of faith, and we found out also that we were having another baby.
Right,
And
we
so,
said that.
Oh, you said that?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we just
So
we,
then it
we
was just
aborted.
like,
We were
abort mission. We got to
So
go a
we
different
actually
route.
left our stuff in Nashville in a storage unit, and we moved back to where you were from to try to just kind of regroup, because we had some
Yeah.
support there and some
Yeah,
stuff.
and a place to live there.
Yeah,
So that was kind of the end of our Nashville dream, and it was kind of like, all right, we've got to figure out, we've got to get like a job, we've got to get a real job.
And then reality pulled really hard back in.
Yeah.
Let me check the camera really quick because I heard it.
Point.
So life pulls us really hard back into reality, and survive and do what a good family would do. Like
Yeah.
be a good man. Do what a good man would
Yeah,
do.
and grow up, and this is time to
we
like,
moved back to the city, and we just started I just started taking work and like getting jobs.
Yeah.
Random stuff and learning new skills and trying to get better. I worked at an Apple store as an Apple technician, fixing computers. Just all sorts of
kinds
weird
of things.
stuff.
Yeah, it was just like whatever
Just
we could
bouncing
get
around.
to pay the
it was
rent
also
and
like
take care of things.
2008, and there was not a lot of work. Or this was 2010 at the time, so right after
Yeah.
the financial crisis of 2008. Anyway, so we finally, in the area that we'd moved, we
There was a
lived-
connection.
We lived in the ghetto for real, in the ghetto of this area.
Of the city.
But randomly, there was this other family there, and there was a connection that we made in this area that took us into this little arts community of theater, which then translated into, it took a couple years of like
Yeah.
on and off work with those people and with that group to finally land a full-time job. But we finally made it into this local community theater realm, and and I got hired on to be a sound designer at this local community theater.
Yeah, and I think at that point it was like we had kind of gone from job to job, and I remember before, when he was offered the position, I noticed like a lot of anxiety take over for him, because it was kind of like he came and told me like, this is like, I'm giving my life to these people. I know I'm giving my life to these people, and this is
Like,
kind
this
of
is a
like
new
the end of
path.
my.
Because it was
This
almost
is
like
the end of our Nashville music dream and our freedom, kind of, in a way.
our own pursuit of like the creation and flourishing of art in our own lives was kind of ending, and then
Yeah.
my own creative process was gonna be then overlaid
Shifted
onto
to
this
somebody else's
company and their dream, and I was
framework.
gonna be used as a tool in that thing.
Yeah.
And I could feel it, I knew it.
Yeah.
And that's what the anxiety was all about.
Yeah, but at this point, with 2 kids, it was just like,
You'll take
you
this
have
job,
to take
sir.
this job,
Yeah.
because we
And,
both had a certain expectation for life at the time. Like, okay, well, we felt like the only option was to take a full-time job so that we could buy a home, so that, we could have the lifestyle that we thought we wanted, or we
Yeah.
thought that other people maybe wanted for us, or
I
that
think that's
was
the key.
expected
That's the key
of
right
us.
there. Is that
So that's the path we
like,
took.
why don't we follow? I've thought about this a lot. Like, why don't we follow our dreams? Like, why don't we just keep going after the thing that we know is right for us and the thing that we
Yeah.
want?
And I think there's so much fear especially when you are responsible for other people. I think there's so much fear in stepping out of these frameworks that insulate us. And, the job, a full-time salary, and these things were going to insulate
Insurance
us. And
the house and the
you're
car
threatened by
and
all sorts of things, like how are you going to survive and how are you going to provide if you don't do this? So it's just like, okay, this is the only option.
And you have like this idea of what you want your life to look like. I'll call those goals. Like, I want to be a good father. I want to have a large family. I want to have a nice house. I want to have XYZ, certain elements of security and insulation in your life. And are each one of those things really the things you want? And is that also the only way that you can achieve those goals?
Or are those things just what you think you want because it's kind of been taught to you, like you haven't seen any other options?
Yeah, and
so it's just like, okay, well, this is the expectation in the back of my mind, and there's no other option. There's no other way to do it.
In my mind, the real question is, why do you want the things that you want?
Yeah.
Like, what put that desire there? And is it really a true desire? Have you really thought deeply about why you want the things that you want, where they come from?
And are these the things that you really do want?
So what we found, coming from this side, the life that 10 years later, after having lived all of that life, what have we seen? What have we learned on this side of things?
Yeah. Well, we're going to tell you. So
yeah. Well, really quickly, I'll just say that. I had a thought, now it's gone. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say it.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think that's what this project is for us, is, number one, to talk about the lessons that we have learned. And if you want to join us, continuing this story, part 2 is about what happens after we take this full-time job and kind of what led our marriage and our family to near destruction, collapse.
Yeah, which we had no idea the consequences that not following our dreams would lead down.
Yeah, or what
Honestly,
we really wanted, and putting the real priorities in life first rather than what we thought were our priorities.
Yeah, so that'll be the unraveling of this story.
Yeah.
You can follow that
And
along.
then part 3 is kind of rebuilding, starting to rebuild, and the lessons we've learned. So I think number 1, it's the lessons we've learned from this experience that we've had and trying to rebuild, learning from what we've from rebuilding. And also number 2, it's a continuation of, it's a real time process of learning and growing and trying to redefine what we really are passionate about, what are the things that are most important in our lives, and how to make it work with a family. And how challenging that's been, because there's not really a framework for doing things differently, the way that we feel we want to live. So it takes a lot of creativity.
We found that there is a way. You can let go of what I'll deem some of the lies that you're taught as a kid, some of the lies that society tells you, like you can only do it this way or else. There are other ways around it that we've found. They're not quite as comfortable as we were used to living, but we have found some ideas that we'll share with you.
Yeah.
And I think that this whole journey that we're taking is really kind of the reestablishment or the rediscovery of our own, I'll call it just our own ability to follow our hearts and be true to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We really want to utilize our talent and our love for the arts to lift people and to share beautiful stories and music and ideas.
And a lot of that takes creating those own opportunities on our own.
Yeah.
And kind of shaping it into what works for us and for our family. And
that's really, like the definition of art, of life, is like creating your version of life that's alive and bubbling up with energy and love, and that's art.
And we really want to instill that into our children, that you don't have to take this one path to have these 5 options, but the options and opportunities are endless if you can be creative. And so
this is a story of, it's not a story of necessarily like the collapse of a family and marriage and divorce and all this drama. It's mostly the story of a couple kids learning how to follow their hearts and learning how to be happy on their own, without all the stuff that supports your illusion of happiness in
And
life.
doing that as a family as well.
Yeah, and taking the family along.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if that sounds like a journey that's that continues to excite you and maybe that you're interested in, follow along and join us in the next video. And thanks for watching. We'll see you on the other side.